Somewhere high in the mountains, where the noise of cars and human voices cannot reach, on a bare rock ledge lies a nest almost the size of a car. And somewhere far below, in the valley, one of you might be walking along a trail right now, unaware of anything. And the eagle perched on this cliff has long since spotted you. It sees you as if you were standing 3 steps away, even though there are almost 3 kilometers between you. This isn't an exaggeration or a beautiful metaphor. It's a unique feature of the eagle's vision that makes it one of the most accomplished hunters on the planet. But the eagle's story isn't just about its keen eyesight. It's the story of how a tiny, helpless chick, unable to even lift its head in the first weeks of its life, grows into a creature capable of spotting prey from miles away, achieving dive speeds unmatched by any other bird, and holding territory the size of a small city for decades. And it's the story of the price the eagle pays to become what it becomes. In this episode, you'll learn why one of the most brutal dramas in the wild unfolds in the eagle's nest during its first days of life. You'll discover how an eagle's vision really works, and why the comparison, seeing 3 kilometers away, isn't just a catchy phrase, but a fact confirmed by research. You'll also discover what happens to an eagle when its famous gaze begins to fail, and how the journey of a bird that has spent its entire life looking down on the world comes to an end. Like and subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. Eagles build their nests, known as platform nests, in the most inaccessible places, on steep cliffs, in the tops of old trees, and sometimes on power line pylons, if there's no more natural option nearby. An eagle pair can use such a nest for decades, not just 1 year, adding new branches each year. Over time, the nest becomes so large and heavy that there are known cases of old eagle and golden eagle nests weighing over a ton and simply collapsing under their own weight. The female usually lays 2 eggs, less commonly 1 or 3, with a few days between each clutch. And here begins something that is almost never mentioned in children's books about eagles. The chicks don't hatch simultaneously, but one after another, with a difference of approximately 2 to 3 days. It might seem like a small thing, but for the eaglets, this difference becomes a matter of life and death. The fact is that in many eagle species, including the golden eagle, a phenomenon has been widely documented that scientists call Cainism, named after the biblical character who killed his sibling. The older chick, the one that hatched first and has had time to grow and strengthen a bit, often attacks the younger one. It pecks the younger one, pushing it away from the food, and sometimes the outcome is tragic for the younger chick. The parents almost never intervene. Why did nature create such a cruel system? Scientists suggest it's a kind of evolutionary insurance. If there's plenty of food in the area, a pair might survive and raise 2 chicks. But if the year is lean and prey is scarce, the parents simply won't have the strength to feed both. And then the one that's stronger and born first survives. It's as if nature has laid a backup plan in advance, just in case the primary one fails. It's hard to hear, but it's not cruelty for cruelty's sake. It's the eagle paying its first price for the right to become an adult. The chick that survives grows at an alarming rate. In the first weeks of life, it is completely helpless. It can't stand, can't feed itself, and can't regulate its body temperature. The mother rarely leaves the nest at first, keeping the chick warm with her own body, while the father forages for food for the entire family. The eagle chick's diet is impressive. Depending on the species, eagles hunt rodents, hares, marmots, snakes, fish, and some species even larger prey, including young ungulates. Parents tear the prey into small pieces and literally feed the chick from their beaks until it learns to do so on its own. The eaglet grows very quickly. In just a few weeks, it transforms from a tiny ball of down into a bird of almost adult size. By the time it's about 10 weeks old, it already weighs almost as much as an adult, and true flight feathers begin to grow in place of down. It's during this period that the young eagle begins to make its first trial wing flaps, standing on the edge of the nest, as if rehearsing what's to come. And here comes the moment that will determine whether this bird will survive to adulthood. When a young eagle is about 10 to 12 weeks old, it takes its first flight. This event even has a special name in ornithology: fledging. It seems like it should be a beautiful and solemn moment. In reality, the first flight is one of the most dangerous episodes in the life of any bird of prey. A young bird doesn't yet know how to accurately calculate its trajectory, can't always cope with air currents, and its wing muscles aren't yet sufficiently trained for full flight. It's not uncommon for young eagles to fall during their first attempts at takeoff, hitting rocks or trees, or landing in awkward, dangerous places from which they are subsequently unable to rise again. But even if the first flight goes well, the hardest part is just beginning. After leaving the nest, the young eagle remains dependent on its parents for several weeks, even months. They continue to feed it while it learns to hunt independently. And hunting is a complex art in itself, not something you learn overnight. You need to learn how to dive properly, time your attack precisely, and handle struggling prey. This is why the first year of an eagle's life is the most deadly period in its entire life. According to various studies of raptor populations, a significant proportion of young eagles do not survive their first year of independent life. The reasons vary: unsuccessful hunting and subsequent exhaustion, collisions with wires and other obstacles, competition with adult birds for territory, and sometimes simply inexperience in assessing danger. The picture that emerges is curious and somewhat sad. The eagle we've come to regard as a symbol of strength, freedom, and superiority is, in its first months of life, one of the most vulnerable creatures in the sky. It hasn't yet learned to be the predator feared by everyone in the area. It's only just learning to become one. But if a young bird survives this critical period, if it successfully navigates its first year, it begins to transform into what makes this episode worth filming. It begins to acquire the vision that will make it one of the planet's finest hunters. Vision that will allow it to spot the movement of a small rodent in tall grass from the heights of a passenger jet. Vision that has led people to create legends about eagle vision for centuries. We'll discuss further how exactly this famous gaze works, and why the phrase, "it sees you from 3 kilometers away," isn't an exaggeration, but a scientifically proven fact. Because what happens inside an eagle's eye will definitely surprise you. Imagine you're standing on a football field, and in the stands across from you, a man is reading a book. You probably won't even notice what he's holding. Now imagine an eagle, soaring several hundred meters above the field, able to spot not the book, but the movement of a small vole in the grass somewhere at the edge of the field. This, very roughly, is how we can explain what we're talking about when we talk about eagle vision. The phrase, "can see you from 3 kilometers away," sounds like a beautiful exaggeration, the kind that floats around the internet without any scientific basis. But in this case, there's real physiology behind it. It's just not structured the way many people imagine. Humans and eagles have eyes that operate on the same basic principle. Light passes through the cornea and lens and hits the retina, where specialized cells, rods and cones, convert it into neural signals, and the brain assembles these signals into an image. But that's where the similarities end. Let's start with size. Eagles' eyes are enormous relative to the size of their skulls. In some species of raptors, the eyeball is almost as large as that of an adult human, despite the bird itself weighing a fraction of a human. Such a large eye provides more space for the optical system, a larger cornea and lens, which means potentially sharper images and better light collection. But it's not just about size. The key difference lies in the retina, the screen onto which the image is projected. The human retina has one central area of maximum visual acuity, the so-called fovea. This is where we direct our gaze when we want to examine something very closely, such as small print. Eagles, like many other birds of prey, are designed differently. They have not one, but two such zones of heightened visual acuity in each eye. This is an anatomically confirmed feature of the raptor's eye structure, known to ornithologists and ophthalmologists who study animal vision. One of these zones faces forward and aids in binocular vision. That is, when the eagle looks ahead with both eyes simultaneously and estimates the distance to an object, which is especially important in the final seconds before an attack. The second zone is positioned so that the bird clearly sees objects to the side, almost at the periphery of its field of vision. This helps it detect movement without turning its head. Moreover, in these areas of the eagle's retina, the density of light-sensitive cells responsible for image detail is significantly higher than in the average human. It is this high receptor density that allows the eye to capture far more fine detail at the same distance, where the human eye can discern little more than a blur. It is precisely because of the combination of these factors, large eyes, two zones of increased acuity, and a high receptor density, but researchers estimate that the visual acuity of some species of raptors is several times greater than that of humans. Exact figures vary depending on the species and measurement method, and scientists are still refining the details. But the fact that raptors' vision is significantly superior to that of humans has been documented repeatedly and is not controversial in the scientific community. There's another detail that makes the vision of birds of prey truly alien by our standards. Humans have three types of cones in the retina, the cells responsible for color vision, sensitive to the red, green, and blue parts of the spectrum. Many birds of prey, in addition to these three types, have another type, sensitive to ultraviolet radiation, which is essentially invisible to the human eye. Why do birds see ultraviolet light? Science currently offers more of a hypothesis than a definitive answer, and it's important to emphasize that this is just that, a hypothesis, not a proven fact for each specific species. In some desert and field birds of prey, such as the kestrel, researchers suggest that the ability to see ultraviolet light may help detect rodent urine trails, which reflect ultraviolet light and leave a kind of glowing trail in areas where rodents frequently pass. This could, theoretically, allow the predator to more quickly locate prey concentrations, even without seeing the animals themselves. Whether this is true for large eagles, such as the golden eagle, is a question that science continues to study, and there is no definitive answer yet for all species. In any case, an eagle sees the world not just clearer than a human. It literally sees it differently, with an additional color channel, the existence of which we can only infer from indirect experimental data. This incredible vision isn't just an evolutionary fluke. Every detail in its design serves a single purpose: spotting prey first and calculating the ideal attack trajectory. Eagles hunt by soaring at high altitudes or perching in ambush on elevated ground, scanning the area. Their keen eyesight allows them to spot the movement of small animals on the ground from heights that would appear to a human as a blurry green carpet, devoid of detail. This is the principle underlying the eagle's entire hunting strategy. Not to pursue prey blindly, but to first spot the target from afar, assess the situation, and only then launch an attack. Once a target is detected, the second part of the hunt begins, the dive. Some eagle species are capable of achieving impressive speeds in a high-speed dive, significantly exceeding their normal flight speed. At such a speed, the bird has literally a split second to adjust its trajectory if the prey suddenly darts to the side. This is where the same system with two zones of enhanced visual acuity comes into play again. One helps keep the prey in focus as the eagle descends, The other helps assess the distance to the ground and surrounding obstacles. This is why the eagle's attack efficiency is so high compared to many other raptors. It rarely launches into a chase at random. It almost always knows exactly where its target is before it even begins its dive. It would seem that such vision is merely an advantage, but in nature, things are rarely unambiguously good or unambiguously bad. The fact is that the eye, so specialized for distant and detailed vision, is not as well suited for some other tasks. For example, near vision and the ability to quickly refocus on nearby objects are not as well developed in birds of prey as in some other animal species. This is partly why eagles sometimes behave awkwardly on the ground, where everything around them is too close for their distance-tuned vision. Furthermore, eagles' keen eyesight works best in good light. At dusk, and especially at night, the vision of most diurnal birds of prey, including eagles, is significantly inferior to that of nocturnal predators such as owls, whose eyes are designed entirely differently, emphasizing light sensitivity rather than detail perception. Therefore, eagles almost always hunt during daylight hours, and their activity declines sharply as dusk approaches. There's another, less obvious cost of visual acuity: territorial competition. If an eagle can spot prey and potential rivals from a great distance, then another eagle can spot them just as well from afar. This means that a territory rich in prey and convenient for hunting becomes the subject of constant visual surveillance and conflict between neighboring pairs. Good vision is not only an advantage in hunting, but also a constant source of competition for prime hunting grounds, because it's virtually impossible to escape a neighbor's gaze. It's no surprise that the eagle's keen eyesight has captivated people across cultures for millennia. In ancient Greek mythology, the eagle was the companion of Zeus, the king of the gods, and was considered a symbol of supreme power and insight. In the cultures of many indigenous peoples of North America, the eagle, particularly the bald eagle, was considered a bird close to the spiritual world, capable of seeing what is hidden from ordinary people. Even today, the expression eagle eye is used in a wide variety of languages as a synonym for extreme observation and attention to detail. Interestingly, real biology in this case doesn't debunk the myth, but rather scientifically confirms it. People have noticed for millennia that eagles see much farther and more accurately than humans, long before scientists, using specialized instruments and experiments, were able to explain exactly how this happens. But no matter how perfect this vision, it doesn't operate at peak efficiency forever. With age, like any living creature, an eagle's visual acuity gradually declines. And with it, its entire life changes. Its ability to forage for food, maintain territory, and remain the dominant predator feared by the entire region. We'll discuss what happens to an eagle when its legendary gaze begins to fail, what an adult bird's territory looks like, and why even such a perfect hunter has its limits in the next, final chapter. Because the eagle's journey from its cliff nest to its final flight turns out to be much shorter than one might think from looking at it in the sky. If an eagle has survived its first, most dangerous summer and fall, if it has learned to hunt, avoided collisions with wires and dangerous encounters with stronger compatriots, a completely different life opens up before it. The life of an adult master of the sky, with its own territory, its own mate, and decades ahead. But this life too is subject to its own mores, and sooner or later, even the most keen-eyed predator reaches a point when the acuity of its famous gaze begins to fade. An adult eagle is a highly territorial creature. A pair of birds occupies a home range, which can range from several dozen to several hundred square kilometers in size, depending on the species, landscape, and available prey. The poorer the area, the larger the territory required to support the pair and their offspring. Eagles regularly patrol the boundaries of their territories. Soaring high above, they not only spot prey, but also literally signal to their neighbors, "This land is occupied." These patrols, as well as characteristic display flights with sharp dives and rises, serve as a signal to other eagles to keep their distance. Direct encounters between neighboring pairs do occur, but most often they don't escalate to combat. The keen eyesight we discussed in the previous chapter allows the birds to spot each other from afar and resolve matters through a show of force rather than actual combat, thus avoiding injury to both sides. Many eagle species, including the golden eagle, form long-term pair bonds, often for life. A pair returns to the same nesting site year after year, renovating the same nest year after year, or using one of several nests in their territory alternately. This dedication to location means that an eagle pair is essentially fixed to their territory much more permanently than most other birds. They know every cliff, every convenient hunting spot, every water source. This is why the loss of a territory for an adult eagle is not just an inconvenience, but almost a catastrophe. Finding a new, equally suitable site free of other eagles is extremely difficult, especially in regions with dense raptor populations. Eagles live quite a long time by wild standards. In the wild, many large eagle species, given favorable circumstances, can live 15 to 20 years, and some individuals have been documented reaching even older ages. In captivity, free from the threats of starvation, competition, and most of the dangers of the wild, eagles often live significantly longer than their wild counterparts, sometimes decades beyond what would be possible in the wild. This difference speaks volumes about how harsh life remains for an eagle in the wild, even after the most dangerous early years are behind them. With age, the efficiency of physiological systems in any living organism gradually declines, and vision is no exception. In aging birds of prey, visual acuity, as well as overall physical fitness, gradually deteriorates. Experts studying birds of prey note that older individuals may experience decreased reaction speed and accuracy in assessing distance when attacking, the very skill we discussed in the previous chapter as one of the eagle's main advantages. For an eagle, whose entire survival strategy is built on spotting prey first and accurately calculating its dive trajectory, even a slight decline in visual acuity means a significant drop in hunting efficiency. An older bird begins to miss more often, expends more energy on unsuccessful attempts, and takes longer to obtain the food it needs to survive. And here's where what we discussed in the first chapter regarding young eagles comes into play, but from a different perspective. Young, vigorous birds, who themselves barely survived their first dangerous year of life, are now growing up and beginning to lay claim to the best territories. Meanwhile, an aging pair, whose hunting efficiency is declining, whose ability to defend their territory from new, more energetic challenges is weakening, faces a difficult choice. Continue to hold on to their familiar territory with all their might, or yield to younger, stronger rivals. The romantic image suggests a majestic death somewhere on a clifftop, surrounded by wilderness. Reality is often far less cinematic, and it's important to address this with restraint, without excessive naturalism, but honestly. The most common causes of adult eagle deaths, as documented by ornithologists and raptor conservationists, are not dramatic encounters with a similarly matched predator. Far more common is starvation during unsuccessful hunting seasons, especially in individuals weakened by age or illness. A significant proportion of eagle deaths, according to conservation organizations in various countries, are caused by collisions with power lines and wind turbines, as well as poisoning, for example, by eating animal carcasses treated with pesticides, or shot game containing lead-containing pellets or bullets. Lead poisoning is generally considered a serious, documented threat to scavenging birds of prey and semi-predator/semi-scavengers, which occasionally includes eagles, who are not averse to carrion during periods of famine. A bird weakened by age or illness becomes more vulnerable to direct competition. Young, strong eagles, and sometimes other large predators, can take over its nesting site or successful hunting grounds, leaving it without a stable food source. Thus, gradually, step by step, the mighty master of the sky, who for decades had controlled a vast territory and could see every movement within it from miles away, is pushed to its edge, and then loses his domain altogether. This is not an instant tragedy, but a slow, quiet process, the same way nature usually ends the stories of most wild animals, without dramatic music, without a close-up. Simply one day, no one appears in the familiar spot on the cliff again. We began this episode with the image of an eagle spotting a human from 3 kilometers away, before the human even realizes they're being observed. And this is indeed true. Thanks to the unique structure of its eyes, 2 areas of heightened visual acuity on the retina, and the ability to perceive detail at great distances, the eagle remains one of the most acutely aware creatures on the planet for almost its entire adult life. But behind this perfect vision lies a price the eagle begins to pay in the nest where not every chick survives. A price it pays in the first, most dangerous year of independent life, when it learns to fly and hunt, risking its own mistakes. And a price it pays in old age, when the acuity of its famous gaze, which has served it faithfully for decades, gradually begins to fail, and the territory it defended for so long is lost to someone younger. It turns out that the eagle, capable of detecting the slightest movement several kilometers away, spends its entire life looking into the distance. But its own journey, from its nest on an inaccessible cliff to its final flight, is surprisingly short and unnoticeable. Perhaps this is the true essence of the eagle's image. Not in its infinite superiority, but in its rare ability to remain at the top for as long as nature and circumstances permit, and in the inevitability of the moment when even the keenest gaze in the sky cannot change the simple law of the wild. What do you think? Is the eagle truly the king of the sky? Or is it just another predator playing by the same rules of survival as everyone else? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you are curious to learn what lies behind the eagle's legendary gaze, like this video and subscribe to the channel. There are many more stories to come about animals that are just as astonishing as this feathered master of the sky.